Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. Over the past year or so, I've heard an alarming number of drone pilots report that they felt intimidated or belittled by flight reviewers who asked them jargon-filled aviation questions during the preparatory briefings for their flight reviews. Let's discuss what is and isn't allowed during a flight review and how to be better prepared for out-of-bounds questions. If you need to better understand what a flight review is or how it is conducted, I encourage you to watch my video called Flight Review Study Guide and to read the one key document on the subject, TP 15395. In this video, we're going to focus on what I'll call pop quiz random questions. And to explore this, I want to discuss what is fair play and what isn't in terms of topics, and a few tips on how to handle what I will call bullies. According to TP 15395, a flight review is an operational exercise where the candidate demonstrates knowledge and skill by going through an actual flight. And a huge part of that actual flight is showing that you can properly prepare and plan that flight, which in turn requires an enormous breadth of knowledge of airspace, aerodromes, aviation documents, how to read maps, how to evaluate ground hazards, weather conditions, and even proximity to bystanders. Tools like Drone Pilot Canada take a lot of the laborious and error-prone elements out of this task for sure, but you are still expected to know where the information comes from and how to derive it yourself. And the flight reviewer can and will ask questions that test your knowledge of this stuff. In fact, in TP 15395 Appendix B, there's a whole section on what they call oral questions. The flight reviewer uses oral questions to measure and evaluate the extent of aeronautical knowledge and to determine that the candidate meets the standard of knowledge required for the certificate, license, or rating being sought. This is an important part of the flight review, and it is the portion of the flight reviewing that results in the greatest variance in standardization. For this reason, it is essential that questions be prepared beforehand to ensure that they are worded correctly and that they are relevant and valid. So the question is, what makes a question relevant and valid, as opposed to asking you to decode a METAR weather report? Well, this section on oral questions offers some clues. Firstly, the prepared questions should be of a practical operational nature based upon the aircraft and the trip assigned for the flight review. Theoretical type questions are not recommended on the flight review, as this area is covered by the Small Remotely Piloted Aircraft VLOS Advanced Operations exam. And it later says, keep questions as practical as possible. So if you're flying a quadcopter and the flight reviewer starts asking you questions about gas-powered RC aircraft, you are well within your rights to politely challenge the relevancy of the question. A suitable response might be something like, I don't fly aircraft like that, but if I ever do, I will certainly thoroughly research all the safety-related topics that are applicable. Similarly, if your flight reviewer starts asking you detailed questions about a nearby aerodrome, such as whether it has left-hand or right-hand circuits, you can politely say, well, that information is in the CFS listing for the airport, and I can access that through SkyVector or FlightPlan. But frankly, I'm on the lookout for manned aircraft at all times, regardless of what direction of circuit they might be flying. During my flight review, I was asked two particular pop quiz-like questions that I recall. One was about the requirements for flying in controlled airspace. To me, that's a perfectly valid question, since flying in controlled airspace is one of the main reasons to obtain an advanced certificate. So you better know the three criteria. having a suitably approved drone, getting approval on a NAV Canada RPAS flight authorization request, and of course, having your advanced pilot certificate. The other question caught me a bit off guard, to be honest. What is the maximum rate of descent of my drone? Well, fortunately, I didn't just say, I don't know, who cares? That probably would not have gone over well. Instead, I honestly answered, I'm not sure, but I know it's in the user manual, and I know the descent speed is for some reason slower than the ascent speed. My flight reviewer responded, okay, well, feel free to look it up, followed by the perfect line that diffused all my stress. Take your time. Needless to say, I still plowed through my manual and was able to quickly find the answer. But that take your time comment brings me to the second part of this video. Dealing with flight reviewers who do the exact opposite to reducing your stress, and instead seem to be out to intimidate or belittle you. TP 15395 makes several specific statements about this. The first comment is, flight reviewers should make a concerted effort to be relaxed and non-threatening. The candidate is probably nervous enough without flight reviewers shaking their heads, stiffening to rigidity, or gasping at inappropriate times. I laugh at that one. If flight reviewers remain calm and neutral, the candidate will perform better. The second comment in the TC document is that flight reviewers are expected to be polite and respectful towards review candidates. Despite all this, I've still heard quite a few horror stories that illustrate the exact opposite behavior. So many stories of reviewers boasting of their long tenure as manned aircraft pilots, of throwing around acronym-laced questions and tossing in the phrase, well, you better know because you're in aviation now. Whether they're doing it intentionally or not, this kind of behavior is classic bullying. It sends the message to the candidate that they are joining an elite club, and they better be tough enough to handle the initiation ceremony. I'm sure this kind of flight reviewer bullying is few and far between, but you better be prepared if you find yourself dealing with a jerk. My first recommendation is avoidance. Before you lay any money down, talk to them on the phone. If they're a dick on the phone, they're going to be a dick at your review too. Just move on. There are lots of reviewers out there, and they are all fighting for your business. So shop around and find someone you are comfortable working with. Second, if you unfortunately find yourself on the day with your drone in your hands and a drill sergeant as your reviewer, stay focused, stay calm. If they ask you something you don't understand, ask for clarification. What do you mean by TAF? Is a legitimate way to ask for a clue while you are untangling their question. Or make a joke about it. Whoa, let's slow down on the alphabet soup. If their question doesn't seem to meet the relevant and valid criteria, call them out on it and get the focus back on safety. For me, it doesn't matter if the heliport is certified or not. I'm always listening for aircraft in the area and will land if I detect an aircraft nearby. Now, I'm not recommending you put on a Teflon suit, but if the reviewer starts pounding you with obscure aeronautical terms, jargon, or factoids, you're well within your rights to ask the purpose of the question. You can't be expected to know everything on the spot, and showing a genuine interest in the relevancy of a topic might actually get you brownie points if you position it constructively. Challenging with, why the hell would I need to know that, may get you tossed, but I've often wondered why Transport Canada expects us to know about VFR charts when there is easier to read and perfectly reliable maps elsewhere, may result in a pleasant conversation. Clearly, flight reviewers intimidating candidates with jargon has been an issue in other areas of aviation as well. The TC document even says, big words and high-sounding phraseology may allow the flight reviewer to display command of language and vocabulary, but only detracts attention from the flight review. I actually find this a bit unsettling that TC felt it necessary to explain this to reviewers. Now, if worse comes to worse, and you fail your flight review, please don't storm off in a huff. Listen to the feedback the reviewer provides you, and think long and hard about it. Maybe you really should have known how to fly your drone in the event of a GPS failure. Or maybe you were just showing off by hand catching your drone when you really didn't need to. Think about it, sleep on it, reread the appropriate bits of TP 15395, and strongly consider climbing back on that horse and trying again when you're ready. But if after a good amount of reflection, you still think you were wronged and failed due to stupid questions or a poor flight reviewer, you do have a couple of avenues you can pursue. If the reviewer is closely tied to a ground school, call them up and plead your case. Alternatively, Transport Canada says they have an appeal process. If a case arises where a candidate is not satisfied with how a flight review is conducted, a written request with details to redo a flight review may be forwarded to your regional Transport Canada office. In such cases, a Transport Canada flight inspector may conduct the flight review or assign another flight reviewer RPAS to conduct the flight review. So there we have it. While a flight review is intended to be a test of your ability to plan and execute a safe drone flight, and it's not intended to be a repeat of the advanced exam, a flight reviewer is well within their right to ask you practical and relevant aviation-related questions out of the blue. Be as well prepared as you can be, but also be ready to question and constructively challenge questions that seem designed just to rattle you. And while it is rare, there are bullies out there. So again, try to avoid booking your review with one. And if you find yourself facing a jerk, be prepared to keep the review focused on safety, not jargon. Good luck with your flight review. Safe and happy flying.